Welcome to the Liquidity Event, a show about all things personal finance with a laser focus on taxes, financial independence, and equity compensation. Hosted by AJ and Shane of Brooklyn FI, each episode will focus on a personal finance topic, some driven by news headlines and sometimes driven by listener questions. And sometimes you'll just get two money nerds rambling about what they think is interesting. Just a quick note before we get started, this podcast is for informational purposes only and should not be considered tax or investment advice.
AJ and I would meet with prospects on Saturdays and Sundays. If you went to our Calendly and it was a prospect meeting, it was on Saturdays and Sundays, including Monday through Friday. So if you, as a prospect, didn't have time Monday through Friday, we would go to the office on Saturday and Sunday. This is pre-COVID, of course, and we would bring people in. We had a PowerPoint. It would be both AJ and I on either side of the screen, and we would go through this PowerPoint. We'd given the clients a beer from the and then
right.
We would probably drink with them, and sometimes we'd have 3 or 4 meetings. Hopefully on a Sunday, like before you know it, we're like stumbling out of the office. Yeah. But we were younger then, so it was easier to manage.
Yeah.
And we had a lot of fun.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of the Only Fee Only podcast. I'm Peter Travolo. I'm here with my co-host Brock Buckles, and today, very excited to have Shane Mason on from Brooklyn FI. Really excited to have him come on, share his story, and share what they're building over in New York. So, Shane, welcome to the show, man.
Thanks for having me, fellas. It's good to see you guys at XYPN this year. Happy we could reconnect here and chat. So excited to chat.
Yes, likewise. So for those who don't know who you are, you want to give a quick overview before we dive into the full conversation?
For sure. So for the majority of people that don't know who I am Shane Mason, CPA, CFP. Got started I went to Ole Miss, got started at PwC in Austin, worked in the tax department there, and then worked on the corporate side of public companies, taking care of their equity compensation, ISOs, non-quals, RSUs, and then moved to New York. In my mid-20s, I worked for a mid-sized firm, had a lot more fun. There was like a whole period where I dropped out of accounting for a while, quarter-life crisis situation. But I realized how much more fun it is to work with individuals and help them with their problems. So I got my CFP license and started helping people out with their personal taxes and then personal finances. Equity compensation questions were flying around Spotify's IPO, and realized that there was a lot of work to be done in helping people with their equity comp. So started an RIA with my business partner, AJ, about 8 years ago, and that is called Brooklyn FI. Can you guess where we were living at the time when we founded that company? Brooklyn FI has been around 8 years. We now have about 20 employees, about 450 households now, about 550 million of assets under management. It's been, that is hard to summarize 8 years, 15 years, but yeah.
So you guys started Manhattan, right? That was the
Queens, actually. Yeah.
Queens, actually. Oh, that's awesome, man. You know, we've gotten the chance to have her on the podcast, and it's just always a great conversation. But what were the things like early on in your career, man, that kind of got you interested in like the numbers or wanting to pursue kind of that route? Was it like something you always knew you wanted to do, or like, do you want to be an astronaut when you were a kid? Like, how'd you get there?
That's a great question. You know, I started selling bubble gum when I was in 4th grade, which is kind of like being a drug dealer in 4th grade because you're not supposed to have it. You know, it's like
that's right.
illegal.
It's always under desks.
So yeah, I've always had this entrepreneurial spirit. I've had all kinds of 1099 jobs, a bunch of jobs in high school. And then when I got to college, you know, I didn't really want to, frankly, go to the college that I went to. I went there for football, and then that didn't work out, and it's a whole other podcast. But I was like, all right, what do you guys have? How am I going to get the hell out of Mississippi? That's where I grew up.
Yeah.
They have a top 10 accounting department, and everybody said it's like the language of business. You can really work anywhere with this degree. And, you know, before I knew it, I was at a master's in accounting and then a CPA, and then I was working at PwC, and I was like, oh, I took this pretty seriously. And it got like the big boy pants put on pretty fast. But, you know, I was always a bartender as well. So I was always like front of house, so to speak, in like extroversion. And then I like worked on my skills of data entry, Excel, numbers, so to speak, back of house, so to speak. And so like I put those two things together in my 20s and created BKFI. So I didn't have any like explicit desires. I just knew I wanted to get out of Mississippi and get into a larger town where I felt like my people would be at. No shade on Mississippi. I go there all the time.
Yeah.
But I just knew I wanted to get out.
So if you don't mind sharing, so getting out, was that the quarter life crisis, or what was the quarter life crisis?
Yeah, well, I was working at PwC for 3 years, and I think I got like a bad performance review or something. And my dad got sick for the last time. And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, I started this accounting journey like 7 years ago, and I paid my dues, and I want to figure something else out. So before I went home to be with my dad, as he, while he was in hospice, and I was there for that. And then my friend's band went on tour in Europe. Like, I ended up being a roadie for my friend's band for like 3 months, and then got a job as a sailor on a catamaran and sailed from France to Boston. And then when I landed in Boston, I went down to New York to see my other friends that had got out of the South, and I ended up like bartending again, and be like, I don't know if I want to be an accountant. Like, trying to take some time to figure out who adult Shane was going to be, or the second phase. Joined the Peace Corps, started a wood shop, all kinds of stuff. Just really poking around.
The most interesting man in the world.
Yeah, I gotta ask, like, what were those days like in the middle of the ocean, like crossing from France to Boston? I mean, like it's just Christopher Columbus at that point.
Yeah, it was really awesome, man. It was like a 42-foot boat, so it wasn't a big girl, and it was really slow because she was a sailboat.
Yeah,
top speed was essentially like 15 miles an hour. So we just like putted across the ocean for a couple months. And there were, honestly, we had a really salty old professional captain that was in the US Navy or the British Navy for, I want to say like 10, 15 years before he left. And he was a navigator. So like, we always waited for great weather windows, and we only hit rough seas when we got off the coast of Canada, and you can't really predict, weeks in advance. So, but we were totally fine. But the best part about it is the nature, obviously, the dolphins, the whales, and the Milky Way in the middle of the ocean in the middle of the night is, as you can imagine, zero light pollution, just an incredible rainbow of dust and stars, and with a full moon under it, and like the waves ripping, and you're by yourself because everyone else is asleep and you're on watch. And it's incredible. Yeah, it's really, really cool. It started my love of sailing and being on boats and being in the ocean.
Yeah, no, that's sweet. I have to ask you about the roadie situation, man, because I've always been like, my spirit animal's always been being a rock star, being on the road with a band or something. I'm like, sounds like a cool experience. How was that?
Yeah, I know that about you, Brock, based on our conversations. I could see that for you. Yeah, I've had a lot of my friends, like I was in accounting school, but all of my friends were in like the music, like getting English degrees and had bands in college and stuff. And one of them has this like rock band. It's like a garage rock group called Bass Drum of Death. And they released this album in 2013 that like blew up, and they had a world tour. And I wasn't like officially the roadie. I just like called them when I got to Europe, and they're like, join us. Like, all my friends were in the band, like, you're here, like, come join us. And I popped in the van, and like next thing I know, I'm loading them in and out of all these venues and selling their merch in France. And like, je ne parle pas français is the only thing I can say in French, which is just, sorry, I don't speak French. But like, we can speak English, and I can sell you these albums and shirts, in English. Yeah. And so I did that for a couple of months, and I was still poor, right? So I was like looking for a cheap way to get home from Europe at that point, and I found a job on a boat as an employee, so to speak. So that's how that all kind of came together.
That's crazy, man. It's like Jack Sparrow in the flesh. No, that's cool, man. So like, fast forward, how do you meet AJ and you guys like come up with this idea where you're going to be like, we're going to start a firm?
Yeah. So I was plugging away with my tax firm. So remember that bartending job I had when I got back into accounting, because I picked up a part-time job doing I didn't want to lose my CPA license. So I did one tax season at a small shop, and it was mostly women there that were on the earned income tax credit that had like 3 or 4 kids, and they would like play with my hair while I did their taxes. And I was like, damn, this is actually really fun. This is like the opposite of PwC. So I was like, let me get back into the accounting space. I turned down the offer in the Peace Corps to go to Namibia. It's like, I'll do that later, which I might still do. I got back into it, and I had all of these questions coming from my clients and my customers about equity compensation. And I also started freelancing on the side when I realized how much I loved working with individuals while I had a day job. And I bring up that bar because I couldn't find an office. In New York City, offices are mad expensive, or wild expensive. So I went to my old boss at the bar. I'm like, hey, man, can I use a booth in the back of the bar as an office? You'll get all these new people coming in here because this is where we do the job. This is where we do the interview and I do people's returns. You'll get new people in and then I get an office. And we signed up for that and that like blew up in the local news. And before I knew it, I was on like I was on the local news, local Fox News. And then I was in Wall Street Journal. And then Maria Bartiromo picked it up on her show. And I was on the national news one day. And so that really accelerated me like quitting my day job because I got all these inquiries. And then I did AJ's taxes, AJ's friend's taxes. And AJ was looking for a cool tax accountant to interview for her podcast. And her friend who had just done her taxes, like, you got to meet my friend Shane. He's like chill. He's not like your Poindexter, typical, like stereotypical accountant. Like you can have him on the podcast. And so the first time we met, I was no shade on accountant. I love most accountants are not like that. It's just the stereotype. And before I knew, like I was on her podcast to discuss accounting for creatives because I had a lot of creative clients. And I met her. So you can hear the first time that we ever spoke to each other because it's on her podcast, which is called Money. And like you can pull up Spotify or whatever podcast player and go to Moneysplained episode 7 or whatever. And it's me meeting her on the podcast, which is cool because now we've been like best friends for like 9 years now. So it's pretty rare to like have that as a part of a friendship, which is cool. But like I met her on that podcast. We talked about taxes and then I was heading to Japan. I know I'm giving you like really long answers to all these questions.
No, I love that. That's what we're doing here.
I was heading to Japan soon. So after the podcast, she was like, let's get together and talk about Japan because I know you're going and I've got all these lists. If you know AJ, she has a list for every country. She's got hotels, restaurants, experiences. She collects them. And that's like her greatest joy, her love language is when somebody takes her up on a recommendation and they go to the restaurant that she recommended or the hotel. So we got together at a bar to ostensibly discuss Japan, and all we ended up talking about was financial planning because I was about to start this firm, and she was really interested in it. And she had gotten into it because she started making money for the first time ever in her life in her late 20s. And in AJ fashion, she went over the top in the research space and was trying to figure out how to do estate planning and tax and insurance planning that she just had a whole podcast about it and spent like hundreds of hours researching it. And so she fell in love with financial planning. I was about to start a financial planning firm. So we became partners. And I just had like kind of a technical background and she had more of a PR, marketing, front of house background, so to speak. So we complemented each other very well. We worked together really well. And that's, been made evident in the growth of BKFI over the past 8 years. So, yeah.
Love it. So how did you guys stumble upon XY Planning Network? I mean, you guys have been very active members. You've been able to grow within.
Yeah.
Where did the relationship start with XY Planning Network?
Yeah. So I think, I got my CFP designation back in 2014 or 15. And I ended up going to like local New York City CE events where you would rock up to an RIA's office and somebody would talk about Social Security for an hour and it was free. And I met someone that his name is Eric Gabor, and he was a very early XYPN member. And he was in his late 20s as well and started his own firm after leaving ACO. And he put me on to XYPN. He's like, you should really think about joining this network. I think there were like at that time, like 150 to 200 members.
Yeah.
And I think they're at like 1,500 or something now. I haven't checked in a long time, but they've grown quite a bit. And so we were relatively early in there, but not like alpha users when they were just trying to figure out their business model. So we got a lot out of XYPN when we joined. And I never worked on an RIA before. So I was like, all right, these people, like they help RIAs set up from a compliance. Like I remember asking somebody at XYPN, they had brought up, someone mentioned the word ACATs. Like they were just like going through the jargon about investing. And I was like, what is ACATs? Like, I don't even know what that is. Like I just come from a different background. So it was really humbling, but also like a really safe space to walk in there not knowing how to run an RIA and then being able to hold your hand through the onboarding, the compliance, the getting clients, the choosing a business model or like a revenue model. And we started with a net worth based fee, and we've changed that fee like 17 times over the past eight years. But they really helped with all of that getting off the ground stuff. And now we're still members, mostly for the community. And that's how we met you guys.
Yeah, for sure.
There's obviously a lot of value in continuing to be a part of it.
It's still the gift that keeps on giving, man.
Yeah.
I love it. No, we had a good time in Austin for sure. So when
I
you
never
guys
would
are
have got
like,
your Trump impression if I hadn't been a member
oh
of
my
XL.
goodness, that's right. That and many others. So, I mean, like when you guys first started, you're like, we're going to be partners. We're going to do this thing, right? What was like, you guys kind of had an understanding about what the dynamic was going to look like? Because you mentioned like you had more of the technical skills, you had more of the marketing experience. So you kind of looked at that. So when you guys started, how long was it before you started being like, okay, I think we're going to bring somebody else on? And then ultimately, how did that evolve to like 20 employees, man?
When you say like bring somebody else on, do you mean like when I brought AJ on, or when
No,
we
after
hired
you guys
employees?
like were doing it together, right, and kind of had your base, like what was that like next hire, and then how did it kind of snowball into where it is today?
Yeah, so the early days was still like there's still ripple effects from those early days because when we created the RIA, like I had a tax practice back then called Mason Tax LLC, very creative name. And I had that going on for I think 3 or 4 years before I met AJ. And so we created an RIA. We created those two separate entities side by side. So our actual first few employees as like partners were actually in the accounting and tax space, which is a lot easier to manage. And because your first few employees are so hard, like if you're making 75K a year, like you're doing great as a financial advisor in the XY space. Like if you didn't have a book that you brought with you from a larger firm. And so then but that's a lot of work. And if you hire somebody at like 60K, you're back to zero. So like you got to do this bizarre cycle of being exorbitantly profitable to almost making no money to making a lot more money, but your capacity is pushing up against the edges of all of your relationships, so to speak. And like everyone wants to kill you, including your
Yeah.
clients. And anyway, so it was nice to have, first of all, two people to absorb like the ins and outs of all those swings, so to speak, and also two people to like do financial planning, do taxation. That's like it just like it like kind of smoothed things out because we had two people instead of just one person by themselves. Anyway, to answer your question, we started off in the tax space. Our first hire was a tax manager because we needed somebody to duplicate me and do additional tax returns. And like you can make a really good living as a tax manager in a tax firm, just like doing tax returns and pumping those out, especially complicated ones. And then AJ was handling essentially the whole financial planning practice. And so then we started hiring associates to help her out. And to answer your question, that was 7-8 years ago. I'd have to go through the old org charts to see like how we built those bricks. What I can tell you is the people that we hired in the beginning were definitely not the people that we have now. Right? Like the type of person that wants to work at a firm of 3 people is not also the same type of person that wants to work at a firm of 20 people. Right? There's just like different risk tolerances. There's different experiences, work history, and the level of expectations from the clients, from the other employees, from the partners, those all change as the firm gets bigger, more established, the brand changes, shifts. Like we actually in the early days focused on creative clients. Like if you go in the Wayback Machine on brooklynify.com, you're going to see a lot more focus on creative clients. But all of the creative clients' spouses worked in tech. And over time, they just like soaked up all of our questions and frankly had a lot more money to throw at having their questions solved. So our niche shifted over time. So the employee base has just changed a lot from who we started with back in the day to who we have now.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were maybe some other shifts, right? Or maybe some other kind of the initial business plan compared to the business plan now? Like what are some other major ones?
Well, I can tell you that we definitely overserved our clients back in the day and prospects. When we were just getting started, like our knife was blunt, so to speak. And so we were just trying to get in front of as many chopping blocks as we could and get as many clients as we could so we could sharpen that knife. So AJ and I would meet with prospects on Saturdays and Sundays. Like if you went to our Calendly and it was a prospect meeting, it was on Saturdays and Sundays, including Monday through Friday. So if you, as a prospect, didn't have time Monday through Friday, we would go to the office on Saturday and Sunday. We had a WeWork back then. This is pre-COVID, of course. And we would bring people in. We had a PowerPoint. It would be both AJ and I on either side of the screen. And we would go through this PowerPoint. We'd given the clients a beer from the WeWork keg that, everyone has. And then we would probably drink with them. And sometimes we'd have 3 or 4 meetings, hopefully on a Sunday, like before you know it, we're like stumbling out of the office. But we were younger then, so it was easier to manage. Yeah. And we had a lot of fun. We've always had a lot of fun, no matter what. We don't really thrive in relationships or business situations where we're not having fun, frankly. So, yeah. And our clients, recognize that. And like, we had an event last night that had an open bar that our clients came to, and it was a lot of fun. And our clients there's plenty of stuffy, big, old RIAs out there for them to go work with. And I think a lot of the success of BKFI was just frankly, I don't know the PG rating of this podcast, by the way, but it was different. I don't know if we can curse on this. Okay.
You can curse. You can ask.
Okay. Yeah. It was more of like a fuck it mentality where we're like, listen, there's no secrets. Like, we have worked in this for a long time. We'll tell you all of the secrets. We're going to be very transparent about how everyone gets paid. And there's no mahogany desk. There's no all that old stuffy stuff is what doesn't work for us. We don't. The reason that we created the firm is because, and a lot of millennials, that resonates with them, right? Like, if you don't have pricing on your website, they often do not hit the contact us button because they grew up in the age of the internet where all information is available, and they don't want to pick up the phone. Gen Z too, right? So we've just always core value of transparency has been in our core values since the beginning, the early days of BKFI. So, yeah. Damn, I lost track of what the hell we were going on about.
No, your event last night, I think, was the original thing. Martinis and mortality.
Yeah. So, one of the problems that we've always had with clients, and one of the things we've always focused on at BKFI as well, is that a financial plan in and of itself does not nearly have as much value as an executed financial plan, right? Like, you actually have to do the work. It's just the beginning of the work. And estate planning is one of those things that is really hard to get done, both from a psychological perspective of thinking about your own demise, but then from an actual execution perspective, a lot of people do not go to the notary to get the will notarized. And even if they do go to the notary to get the will notarized, you need 2 witnesses, and the notary needs to know what they're looking at. And it's also like you're putting a document in front of a stranger that has all of your last wishes on it. So it's just like, it's hard to do. People don't want to do it, and it's intimate, and you're giving it to a stranger. And after you've already done all that, you don't feel like you're not even sure if it was done right, because then you go home and you scan it. Anyway, so we had an event last night, and we do this multiple times a year, where any client that's in New York, we hire notaries to come to the event, and we rent out a bar, and it's open bar for the clients. And then we offer anyone in town a time slot to come in, and there's witnesses there, and they come in and they get their estate plan notarized. And it's like, your financial planner is there. So if you have questions, you can get them answered. If you're waiting because the person before you or the person after you is taking a while, just like a haircut, there's an open bar. So enjoy that. There's food too. And then also there's like a networking aspect of it where there's other clients there, which I always love. So since all of our clients work in tech, there's always a conversation between someone that works in, say Meta, and somebody that works at Google. And they're like, what's going on with at your firm? What's going on at my firm? Right. And so you get like a bit of cross-pollination, not only in business, but also occasionally, after 8 years, there has been romantic cross-pollination. So it's fun. It's cool. And we tend to bring on our financial planners that are in the Northeast area. And sometimes we do events in San Francisco. And we were going to do one in Austin for XYPN, but our clients there told us that they were all good. They didn't need one.
Yeah. I love it. Well, sparks are flying over at Brooklyn FI. I love it.
Yeah.
So how do you take your martini?
Dry with a twist. And if they have Plymouth, that's my preference, but not every bar has Plymouth, unfortunately.
There you go. The man knows his preferences. Well, man, yeah. For people that are out there that are like, getting this thing started, that might look at a firm like yours and be like, man, I just would love to get to that point one day, or I'd like to get to that place to where, I feel like I've made it a little bit, right? Like, what would you tell somebody that's just getting up and running, trying to navigate it and just trying to like get one foot in front of the other right now?
Yeah, well, I think that we one positive takeaway that we took from XYPN was that you should focus on a niche. So even though we focused on creatives at first, we were able to pivot towards where the niche truly was, where we could have the biggest impact for us, which was equity comp. And I must say, there's a lot of equity comp firms out there, and I have a deep respect for all of them. I highly encourage anyone that wants to go into equity comp to also heavily focus on the taxation of it, because it is the majority of the problem is probably a taxation problem. So I would, get your EA, get your ECA, and maybe even your CEP. I met some really cool CEPs at Savant Wealth earlier this week. Not to derail the conversation, but I do have a software solution that helps with equity comp. So I've been speaking for advisors, and I've been speaking to a lot of equity comp advisors lately, and they're great. So it's an example of a great niche, but like figure out what that niche is that you want to work with, and just go all in, man, and be incredibly curious, and definitely overserve your clients at the beginning. Like if you ultimately want to charge $1,000 per month, I start a lot lower, $200, $300 per month, just so you can get the at-bats necessary to look behind the curtain on what their true problems are, get feedback on how you're doing, and then pivot, and don't take things too personally. You got to be a risk taker in the entrepreneur space. So you kind of have to fake it so you make it in certain aspects of what you're offering your clients. And then if you don't satisfy what they need, feel free to refund them. We've refunded quite a few clients for experiences that they didn't enjoy just because we promised you something and we didn't execute. Your brand and your reputation is everything. So if you ever don't execute, just take that L on the chin and chalk it up to, experimentation. And so that next time you do it, you'll do it a lot better. And a lot of times in the early days, if we were doing something that we'd never done before, say like a solo 401k setup at TD back when that was a thing, we would often do that for free just so that we can get an at bat with the client. And then they wouldn't feel like they weren't charged for something that we're learning how to do on the fly. So you got to really look at it as an investment. And like, if you love the work that you're doing, then you would do it for free. You shouldn't do it for free. But if you're doing something new, right, you get a new skill that you then get to take to everyone else in your target market, then see if that can make sense for you. But yeah, I could talk about that topic, about turning corners and growing up and leveling up all day. Yeah. I think having a business partner is really crucial as well. Somebody that complements you in terms of style or skills, night owl versus morning person, extrovert versus introvert, technical versus front of house, whatever it is, the yin yang, peanut butter and chocolate is really important, because then you get to fully complement. Whereas if you get two people that are the same working together or separately, you don't really get the dynamism that you can get from a more complementary partnership.
That's always a joke, man. I've said this on this podcast a million times. It's like, if there were two Brocks, you'd meet a lot of people and then nothing would ever get done after that. Like, you know what I mean? Like, you have to find the people that complement like what, you're not good at, or they just bring ideas to the table that are different than you. But you said something there, man, and I want to dial in real quick on that just a little bit more. It's like, you're going to take some L's, right? And I think a lot of people have this expectation of like, well, we're going to do this. I'm going to know everything. I'm going to have everything together. And then like they have a client that gets frustrated one day and they're like, well, I didn't know that was going to happen, or I didn't expect that to happen. It's like, it's just a part of growing, right?
Well, some things you can't control. Like I definitely don't take responsibility for things you can't control. If the market's down, that's not your fault. Yeah, you got to do some client education there. But there are other examples where you just did your best, and not everything is a guarantee. Like, for example, if you're giving equity, we have clients recently that have come to us because we give equity compensation advice, and we talked them into selling their shares in Palantir, for example, or an Uber or a Spotify or what have you. And we probably secured financial independence for them for the rest of their lives, but that stock has gone up 3x since we had that conversation. And it's like, you can't, it's financial advisory. Working and dealing with the future is a very interesting place to live in, like, especially coming from the accounting space where all they deal with is the past. Yeah. All they focus on is execution, and there's not like a psychological aspects to it. Moving from dealing with the past and moving into the future requires a different set of skills. And you're working with humans' emotions. And so, yeah, I wouldn't take L's, or like, you got to be able to separate the difference. But even sometimes always err on the side of refunding or fixing things or doing something special for the sake of your reputation, because we work in a reputation game. If you work in the service-based business, I'm not saying anything new here. All of your listeners know this, but I'm just leaning into it.
Sure, for sure.
I love it. Any other golden nuggets that you'd give out to people that are listening? Was there anything you wanted to share?
That are starting up?
No, maybe just in general, like what's been on your mind, right? Like most people would say small boutique, and you guys are getting into that larger firm size. Like what's on your mind? Like what's Shane thinking?
Well, we've got a lot going on lately. I mean, once you're at 20, 25 people, you get to delegate a lot of that work. Like anyone, I guess like something that I think about a lot is the difference between a lifestyle practice, a small giant, and an enterprise. And there was a frank discussion and a decision that AJ and I had at the beginning of BKFI, and we decided, like, we actually knew about these problems, right? Like we knew that if you built a firm that was designed to create a great lifestyle for the owner, it's going to be a little bit easier to accomplish. And then you're going to be seeing clients for the rest of your life. And some people love that. And you get 3 or 4 people to assist you, and you do like a Matthew Jarvis or a traditional RIA type practice where you're the one that sees all the clients. But the enterprise itself doesn't have a ton of value if you were going to try to sell it, because whoever buys you is ultimately going to need you to sit in front of those clients because they don't trust you. So they don't trust that the clients will be retained at the ultimate company. So AJ and I made the conscious decision to build an enterprise from the jump. And we built everything to be delegatable, which was, of course, actually pretty required for us because there was 2 of us. So we weren't building things in parallel. We had to build everything so that we could delegate to one another in case someone was on vacation, which ended up working great as we started to hire people because all those workflows were built out. And it kind of productized the service as well, because we always knew everyone would get the same experience. If you've got 50 different clients getting 50 different experiences, or just like I am at your beck and call type of experience, then it's just not something that a firm will want to purchase from you. You have to productize and serialize all of those services. So we did that for the past 7 years, and then worked out great. We were able to bring on 20 people, and AJ and I were finally able to both step away from seeing clients at the beginning of 2024. And then we spent like the last year and a half not seeing clients, and not spending 40 plus hours a week in the business. And, idle hands and idle minds are really interesting. They're really tough. Like things that didn't used to bother you because you're not distracted by work start to bother you. Like we used to think that retirement in your late 30s and your early 40s would be an amazing thing. And then you realize you got out of school before everyone else did, and you're just kind of hanging out by yourself, and you're wondering why people don't want to hang out with you. And it's not anything. Yeah. It's not your fault. It's just because other people have normal lives. Like most of us don't have that opportunity. So that's just like stuff that's been on my mind lately. And AJ and I have recommitted to a bigger initiative from 2026 to 2027 that are going to get us a lot more invested and active in the business. And we took some nice, kind of like a half sabbatical, and now we're back in, which is really exciting. We're really looking forward to 2026. And, we started our fintech platform, Gemifi. That was originally just a part of BKFI for our advisors. And now we're working with third-party advisors, and we've got paying customers providing feedback and contributing to the development costs. And there's definitely a lot of work to be done on the platform, and we're really excited about the roadmap for it. So we got multiple irons in the fire now, and we're recommitting to growing everything in 2026.
Yeah, no, for sure, man. That'll be awesome to see you guys do that. Just out of curiosity, when you were at that like 35,000 foot view, when you had gotten to the point where it's like, we can go take this half sabbatical, like what were some of the cool things about that? And then what were some of those things where it's like, well, why am I thinking about that? This is ultimately where I wanted to be. So like, why is that even on my mind type deal?
Yeah. I mean, give you an idea of like what I did. So, and takeaways that I got, like, it's interesting. I think everybody entertains the idea of like going back to school to some degree, right? Like maybe I should get a master's, or maybe just like the work I'm doing in my business is better than a master's degree or what have you. Or, I was entertaining like getting into other fields. Like I've always wanted to get like a history degree or stuff like that. And like, I'm a person that is always Like, as you can see from all the different lives I was talking about earlier, like entertaining other things, which I think enrich your experience as a financial advisor, because if you're talking to other clients or your own employees, you can just talk and you can have an emotional intelligence and you can put yourself in other people's shoes, and you can talk on a wide range of topics if those are your interests, which I find cool. So I've always wanted to get the CFA, and I was like just always so curious. It's just been bothering me for years. So I did level 1, and I kept track of all of the things that I learned from it. And there were some fun nuggets in the finance space, and I never understood how they worked before, like how the Treasury issues bonds, yield curves, derivatives, stuff of that nature. Now, was it worth the 350 hours to go through all of that? I don't think so. And then level 2 and level 3 aren't happening. So there's fun stuff like that. Like, I spent some time sailing, and there are some software. I spent a lot of time sailing, actually. And there are some softwares in the sailing world that visualize how the future will look. And it shows the wind forecast into the future. And it's a really interesting way to view something that's going to happen in the future. So I'll be incorporating some of that into the software that shows your future vesting schedules and your future balance sheet within Gemifi. So I think you can take inspiration from all over. And so the half sabbatical, I think everything informs everything else, and everything is related. And if you approach life that way, I think it's more fun. So
I love it. Well, man, this has been fantastic. You got an awesome mind. It's cool to kind of hear you just talk about all the things that you've done and what you guys have built. So for the people that are out there that want to follow along with what you're doing, what's the best place to do that?
Yeah, I mean, my LinkedIn, which is Shane Mason CPA. We have a newsletter at BKFI that I think is fun. And then, yeah, I'm not going to give you my personal Instagram because sometimes I curse a lot more on there, but it's not hard to find. But yeah, I'll see you at a conference. I'm going to be at like 25 of them in 2026. So I look forward to seeing you guys and anyone that's listening. And I am super approachable. I love everybody, and I'm an optimist about human beings. So if you see me at a conference, please come have a beer with me.
Yeah, I can vouch for that for sure. Great guy. Thanks for the time, man.
Yeah, thank you guys. Good to see you guys.
You too.
Likewise.